The same way we don't need postal clerks anymore. I can send you an email for free and it's instant, and that's just the end of the post office. Sorry, but it just is. That function will go away. What's going to be left for banks is the high value add services, structured finance, investment advisory, all of the things that make a dynamic economy function. We still need people to do that.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on this magnificent Monday for what is going to be nothing short of another jam-packed daily market update. And we have, as always, a lot to cover. I wanted to start off on that clip of Brian Brooks, who was one of the individuals in the runnings to become the next SEC chair. Of course, Trump and his administration chose Paul Atkins, somebody who's also very friendly to the cryptocurrency space. It's worth mentioning that Brian Brooks is also on the board of Hedera Hashgraph. Hedera truly doesn't get as much of a mention as it should, but that's for another video. This is a daily market update where we keep you up to date with everything happening in the crypto space and the broader market, so do check out that subscribe button. But that was a clip of Brian Brooks talking about what's happening with this technology. And I want to start off on a positive note. And actually, one of my favorite articles or reports that I've came across as it relates to the cryptocurrency space by big banks is the Wells Fargo article that is all about digital assets, a world of possibilities. And they talk about the prior internet, which, as Brian Brooks highlighted there, really changed the way the postal, sort of more broad informational rails, it really changed that. It modernized it. We're going through a similar thing with value, and you're going to end up cutting out a lot of the middlemen. You're going to make the whole system more efficient, and that's going to take place on some of the distributed ledgers that we talk about today. But one of the most interesting things that they talk about, and remember, Wells Fargo, very big bank, this came out in August 2022. We covered it at the time when it came out. We believe digital assets are as transformative of an innovation on par with the internet, cars, and electricity. That's a bold statement. Oddly, they may be one of the easier transformative innovations to grasp at this early stage. The reason is that they have a present comparable, the internet. The internet is a digital network that moves information around the globe. Digital assets, cryptocurrencies, tokens, etc., are the building blocks behind a new digital network that moves value around the globe, such as financial assets, intellectual property, and other valuables. The world will soon know two internets. In our opinion, the internet of information and the internet of value. Visual below, we'll look at it in a sec. Most importantly, we believe the internet of value will be as transformational to the world of finance as the internet of information was for information and communication. And I want to start off on that positive note because if you look at the news flows today, they're pretty damn negative. And I always want people to remember the opportunity that the formation of the internet of value, which buildings blocks are some of the cryptocurrencies, the public cryptocurrencies that we talk about today. I always want people to remember how much of a major opportunity this is. Certainly when we end up in a bit of a doldrum, low interest, lackluster market. I mean, things are generally progressing in the direction we've expected them to and want them to. And, if you look at my portfolio, it's doing very well. If you want to unlock that, do become a Patreon. However, sometimes people get a little bit fatigued. We want to keep that fire within your belly. That's why this channel exists. And on days like today where the news flow is awful, this is from the legend that is Sir Keir Starmer. He's saying Britain moves to war fighting readiness. He talks about essentially a major expansion in kind of military spending and being more committed to NATO than ever, but also says that he's all about Britain, which he's clearly not. He's been asked the question, when Westminster or Davos, the WEF, and he basically said the WEF over his own governmentary, whatever. Anyway, we don't want to go down that route. Pentagon chief also saying ready to fight and win against China, urges Asian allies to boost defense spending. So why are we covering this? This is very sort of doom and gloom, but this is the news flow today. And I think on the back end of this, and we're already seeing it within Europe, we're going to look at some tariff information or news flows that are coming out today. On the back end of this kind of negativity, which is why I started off on the positivity, there's yins and yangs in life, you're likely going to have some negative price action, not just for the cryptocurrency space, but the broader markets. And we're already starting to see that. However, don't lose sight of the bigger trends. Why we like to look at the weekly charts is because, we're not interested in sort of sub-daily charts unless we're trying to trade or we see a trade set up. We're interested in, as investors, the broader direction of things, which I still think is up, generally positive. If you do become a Patreon today, the first thing you've got to do is go and watch yesterday's meeting, because we give our technical merit for why we're investing in what we're investing in. And it's a very bright picture, and I think there's enough evidence there to, be unwavered on days like today when you see the kind of news flows that we see. We also have news about European auto stocks fall 2% as Trump's 50% steel tariffs inflate EU trade tensions, and China counters Trump's accusations of Geneva trade deal violations, says US undermined consensus. China pushes back against Washington's accusations that it had violated the Geneva Agreement, which I think was, the market certainly took that as a positive thing. The Trump administration has increased tech export restrictions and put pressures on Chinese students' visas. Tensions between the US and China have risen beyond just trade. Pentagon chief, and we looked at that in just a second. So the reason I highlight this isn't to fearmonger anyone, because remember, the news is always over-exaggerated. Fear sells. It's just to kind of perhaps buffer you or give you an inkling in regards to why you might see some negative price action today. And I do think you'll see the stock market more than likely opening down. I think there is a gap that potentially could be filled here. I think generally, though, or my bias is that we see a full recovery of this downside and we embark on higher ground. And when it comes to investing, it's a very simple game, and that is the game of the thing that you're investing in doing better than a inflationary devaluing fiat system. And I think the proliferation of that continues regardless of Doge efforts, regardless of efforts to reduce government spending. I think that what we've seen is pushback of that. We've seen some of it, and it is generally moving in the right direction. But I think ultimately we see continued proliferation of the monetary system. It's kind of too big for that not to happen at this moment, and serves too much of a purpose. But there is a bit of a gap here that could get filled. That may take place this week. I could be 180 degrees wrong, but I'm just saying the news flows are very negative this morning, and we actually could just embark onto higher ground, which I do think we're going to do regardless of whether we have to sort of come down a little bit. It's a new month, a little bit of a lackluster month. We shall see. So on to perhaps some more positive news. Let's just take a look at the German stock market, or the DAX, because I'm interested in how this has opened. We will drop down to the daily time frame. I mean, the DAX has done really well. ECB have their meeting this week where they're going to make a rate decision, and they're likely going to drop interest rates by 25 basis points. It's the Fed that's really holding strong. And that is still to come. Are they not doing that in preparation of something more grave coming down the road? Well, that's a question that I don't have the answers for. But I think there's a number of reasons people may speculate. There has been some speculation on Twitter that Jerome Powell is going to resign. I don't believe that's the case. I'm not seeing anything credible on that. However, again, just like with media, take with a pinch of salt what you see on Twitter. So I think the stock market, based on the negative news headlines, is likely going to open down today. Why I put that thing at the start was because, never forget the broader thing of what's taking place. And I want to go over to CoinShares report. We like to look at these every single week. They get released on a Monday. CoinShares consolidate all of the data concerned to digital asset funds. So ETFs, ETPs, notes in the UK. Well, we don't have many notes, ETNs. And what they do is essentially compile it and release a report. And the opener is Ethereum leads digital asset inflows with strongest run since 2024. So last year. Could this be symbolic of alt season starting? And BlackRock actually on Friday sold quite a lot of Bitcoin, one of the biggest days, might even be the biggest day in terms of outflows. And then you saw Ethereum have one of the greatest days in terms of inflows by BlackRock. Could that be a shift towards alt season, which I do think is coming? And actually, there's a lot of people out there that are very sort of frustrated in regards to when alt season. And we continue to highlight this chart. The last Bitcoin dominance period, where Bitcoin was dominant, took 1,085 days. Today, we've only been going up for 1,015 days. So we've still not even reached the amount of time it took for Bitcoin dominance to roll last cycle and alt season to really kick in. We're still right on cue. And could what BlackRock are doing potentially be the start of that. However, this is not all positive by any stretch of the imagination. Digital asset investment products saw $286 million in inflows last week, bringing the 7-week total to $10.9 billion. Ethereum surges, Bitcoin pauses. Ethereum led with 321 million in inflows, its best 6-week run since December 2024, while Bitcoin saw a reversal midweek. So it had a great week, one of the best weeks, and then we had literally the worst day in terms of outflows on Friday, ending with an 8 million in outflows, so generally negative. US remains dominant with 200 million, we'll say, in inflows, but strong activity emerges in Germany, Australia, and Hong Kong. And you can see it was ARK's 21 shares that actually saw the biggest outflows this week, followed by Fidelity, then, of course, Grayscale. Generally, BlackRock is the dominant. I mean, there's a reason there where they are. In regards to assets, Bitcoin saw a minus 8 million in outflows. Ethereum saw a positive 321.4 million. This is one of the greatest inflows Ethereum has seen, which is interesting. Outflows in Bitcoin, inflows with Ethereum, both largely from BlackRock. Multi-assets saw minus 2.4. Solana saw an inflow of 1.5 million. And XRP, which suffered insane outflows, the worst outflows last week, has seen continued outflows. What the hell is going on there? Because that is suggestive that institutions, which are the typical users of these funds, are dumping their exposure to XRP indirectly or directly through these funds. And of course, you don't have spot ETFs in the United States. Could that be in preparation for a spot ETF? Or could that be because they know something? Remember, XRP had ran into all-time high resistance. Very likely that you were going to pull back there, like we said. You have done that. We still think XRP is going to $19.27. So those institutions might not be the smartest. We'll see. Sui saw inflows, Litecoin flat. Cardano saw 100,000 in inflows. Short Bitcoin products saw outflows positive. Chainlink saw inflows and others saw inflows. Let's read what it has to say here. Ethereum led the pack this week with another week of inflows totaling 321 million, bringing this 6th consecutive week run of inflows to $1.19 billion. Its strongest run since December 2024, marking a decisive improvement in sentiment for Ethereum. I'll show you something interesting in the Ethereum chart in just a second. While XRP saw its 2nd week of outflows totaling 28.2 million. The week began with strong inflows for Bitcoin. This reversed midweek following the New York court decision to declare US tariffs illegal, ending the week with minor outflows of $8 million. The first following a 6th consecutive week of inflows totaling 9.6 million. So we are still going to get an alt season. I truly do believe that. And I think where Ethereum is today, I'll take the draws off. I was doing something with Patrons. And I'll take it off log. You know, I think this could just be a disbelief phase. And then actually you will see some positivity. But today you're likely going to see, I would say, negative market action across the board based on the headlines. I do think that. I think this week could be a bit of a lackluster one. If anything, just going with the general trend to the downside. See what happens with economic data. I think you've got PMIs today. You've got a number of PMIs servicing and manufacturing. There's a lot going on, but I think Ethereum is very kind of, let's have a look at this, Bitcoin-esque, if you will, in regards to, let's rewind it. It's annoying how TradingView have decided in their infinite wisdom to put this replay button on. I don't know why they've done that. Maybe some people were tricking people in regards to the price of things. So this is a 2-week chart. We'll put it on a weekly. You can see what I'm highlighting here, can't you? You know, remember this was on obviously the 19. We'll leave it at that. The lockdown news, and this is obviously on tariffs and things like that. Different news, but same market structural. And you know, I'm not the most bullish on Ethereum. I think it's going to do well. I think other altcoins will outperform, and I certainly own significantly more of other altcoins. I don't actually own any Ethereum at this point. I did hold on to some for gas fees that, of course, we were up massively on, but we rolled that into some smaller coins. I'm hoping I'm not going to have to pay any gas fees certainly sort of 2021 was insane in regards to gas fees. I was unstaking things for like $250. But I do think this is interesting, and I kind of want to love and leave you on that note after having a quick look at Bitcoin, which, it's doing what we've set out for it. You just need to be patient. It's done what we've set out for it since we got back into the markets at 16K. I got the Bitcoin dominance trade wrong, I would say. We should have just put all our money into Bitcoin. Majority of my money is in altcoins because I think they're going to outperform. I do think that'll be right eventually. But, time could be costly. I ultimately think we've got 306 for Bitcoin, and we've got a number of narratives that are going to see us get there. That's it from me, guys. So general takeaways are, I think you're going to see broadly negative price action today based on the news headlines, and probably not that much in regards to positive catalysts. Maybe the PMIs are positive. Never forget what's happening here. You've got the same thing that's going on, or that went on with the internet in regards to kind of democratizing information, bring us into this global value informative state. We've got a similar thing going on with crypto. News flow is very negative. Interesting in regards to what institutions are doing as it relates to positioning in the cryptocurrency space. Outflows for Bitcoin, massive inflows for Ethereum. Is this the start of alt season? We'll see. And generally, the cryptocurrency space, I don't think is in a bad place, despite there being low interest and kind of a fatigued retail. That's it from us, guys. I'm going to love and leave all of you. It's always an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you soon.